Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. Happy to be here tonight. As usual, tonight's topic long term relationships. Stand by me. And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. I know I'm doing well after the end of a very long week. I'll just talk briefly about that because, I like to talk about myself and what's going on with me. No, just kidding. So today, for some of you know that this past October 15th, which happened to fall on a Friday, was the tax deadline, and I do still work for TurboTax, so I help people get their taxes in line, and believe it or not, answer questions about their taxes. And if you told me a year ago that I would be doing this job, I would have laughed because I am not a tax person. I should say I wasn't a tax person. In fact, I loathe the whole process, numbers and figuring stuff out, especially if I owe someone money. That seems to make it worse. But anyway, this past Friday was they call it mini peak because it's not as busy as the regular tax season deadline, which this year fell on May 15th. So these are all the people that waited to the last minute for the May 15th deadline, and then they waited again to the last minute for the October 15th deadline, and it was call after call and busier than normal all week. So I'm happy to be doing the broadcast tonight, and at the end of that very very long week, and hopefully I'll be rejuvenated by the broadcast. I've had a great weekend with Jennifer, and I'm all geared up and ready to go to tackle this topic about long term relationships. So let's say hello to the rest of the panel, and starting with our illustrious producer and our friend from Australia, Glenn. If you could take a minute to say hello to people and tell us how you're doing in your neck of the woods.
I'm doing well. Hello. Yeah. If you want to know more, you'll have to ask me questions.
Well, you were saying before the broadcast that you were giving someone scone and some tea. So tell us who's at your house and why.
Well, for a start, it's scone, not scone. So please.
Oh, sorry.
Pardon me.
Scone. Who's ever heard of that?
Well,
About
here in
Just,
America,
millions
that's what
of
they're called,
Americans.
scones. They're called
I
scones
don't
here.
even think they're real scones, what you call scones.
Okay, well, tell
Anyway,
us what a scone is then.
it's like the British scones. You know what they're like? They're not cookies or biscuits.
Right.
Are
They're
they
in
the
between.
triangle
What?
things?
No, they're round. They're about an inch and a
We
half
don't know what the
tall.
crap we're
Boy, he
doing over
acts
here
like
in
he
America.
see that's what he does, Jen. He acts like, oh, you don't know what's like in my country,
Well, you
and
know what? If we
You
are
don't.
confident in our self-esteem, we will not take offense. We'll just
Well,
I'm
that's
not
take
exactly
offended.
piss
why I
right
was.
along with Glenn.
Well,
I'm not
there you
offended.
go. There you go. I'm not
There you go.
uptight. You
we
are.
can enjoy his pokes.
So
I
Mr. Wallman is outside and he's got his excavator ready to fire up. So I need to
Sweet.
feed him.
I got you. So seriously though, what is the consistency? Pretend like we're morons and we've never seen a
Why
scone
would I
before.
pretend?
Yeah. Jen- Jen's like,
I love it. This is the way Glenn says,
I
"I
mean,
love you."
don't make me look it up on Google. Just tell me. Just take a minute and tell me what's so you're saying it's not a
It's not a
biscuit,
cookie. It's not a biscuit.
right? Okay, so what is it?
Oh, it's like
It's a
flour and
scone.
water, basically.
Okay.
Pretty
Well,
much. And for further recipe instruction, you'd need to speak with Sandra.
Okay.
okay. So you really have no idea what it
I
actually
have a
is then.
basic idea. I have made them before, but cooking is not
Okay.
at the top of my priority list.
Okay. Well, I'm not a cook either, but I know what's in a cookie, you know. Anyway.
She's
Yeah,
a
say
smart,
hello.
smart cookie. Yeah, that's right.
A smart scone.
Yeah, I'll let you get on with the beloved.
Yeah, this is going to be a fantastic broadcast. Jen, say hello to the people, please.
Hello, peoples. Look at all these beautiful people in the chat. Hey, guys.
Yeah. Welcome
Listening to
everyone.
us laugh and pick on each other.
Yeah, that's fun. When a broadcast starts like this, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Take a minute and say hello to everyone in the chat for us, Jen.
All right. Alex popped in first. Hey, Alex. Great to see
Hey.
you. Annette. And we have Joel. We have I and Annie. Hey, Annie. Let's see. Stephanie. Stephanie's here. We haven't seen Stephanie in a while.
I
It's so good to
know.
see you,
Hey,
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Really glad you're here.
Yeah.
And Glenn just popped into the chat. Hello, Glenn. And that's who we have so far.
Great stuff.
And I have
Okay.
a headache this evening, so all of this laughter is not helping. Thanks,
It's not
guys.
helping? Oh, no.
No, but it's worth it.
It's
I'm
worth
laughing through the pain.
That's great. Well, hopefully by the end you'll feel better. That's
And
great.
John just popped in.
Well,
Hey, John.
good, John, because this is part of the write-up, but I'll just say that tonight's topic is a suggestion from John, so I'm glad he's actually here to hear it. So wonderful. So glad everyone's here, and as usual, we'll say hello to anyone that comes in when we get a chance.
Janet's here. Janet. I get so
Janet.
excited when Janet's here.
Yeah, we love Janet. Well, we love everyone, but
Yeah. Just Janet a little bit more than everybody else.
yeah. Well, Janet's been. I can't think of who's been in the chat that still comes the longest, but I think Janet's one of them.
Yeah.
Stephanie is too, and then people that were around when we first started, they pop in.
Yeah, like Celine and Brenda.
Right. Yeah, Brenda pops in very shortly, just to I don't know what she does when she comes in. She just comes in and says hello, and then usually takes off. Anyway, all right. So again, as a suggestion from John, and he also did suggest the one that we covered last week. But so before I actually get started with the write up, this should show you guys that when you guys make suggestions about things, we follow up on it. So if you have topics for the show, you can put it in the chat, you can put it in the descriptions, you can send us an email, you can come into the Discord and leave a message there. So there's several ways you can get the message to us that you have a topic you'd like for us to discuss, and we love it. I feel like last week's topic was a really good one, and enjoyed talking about that subject. And I also very invested in this subject too, and I'll get into that when I read the write-up. Okay, so here we go. TSL long-term relationships, stand by me. That's the topic for tonight. For a very long time, I've studied and pondered the question, why does love not last? Why do relationships end? How do people who once loved one another enough to join their lives together at some point fall out of love? You hear it all the time. I don't love you anymore. I've fallen out of love with you. And people just leave. They split. They divorce. You've heard me say this before. Divorce is on a steady rise. However, when researching this topic, divorce rates are actually lower in 2021. Jen made a good point as to why this might be. With the virus and many offices being closed, people literally could not get divorced for a period last year. Other sources imply that married couples essentially being forced to be at home together, isolated and sequestered in their homes, and forced to take a long, hard look into the realities of their relationship has caused many issues to arise. The bottom line is divorce has been on steady rise since the late 1800s. And in the 60s and 70s, it jumped over 50% of all marriages ending in divorce, and it remains close to that mark, statistically speaking, to this day. However, tonight's broadcast is not about divorce, it's about long term relationships. This is another suggestion from one of our listening family members, John, aka Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. The second topic we are doing in as many weeks, given to us by John. Thanks so much. We do indeed appreciate any topic ideas. As you can see, we follow up on them. For inspiration, tonight's broadcast song is Stand By Me, and here's the link in the description. Jen picked this version as opposed to the original, which is very popular, sung by B.B. King. We hope you like it. So how do you have long-term relationships? How do you make your relationship last? What elements in a marriage keep you together? What things cause the death of a relationship? Why do two people that fall in love go to all the trouble to get married, tie their lives together, but later fall out of love? I think we would have to hear each individual story from every couple who went through a divorce in order to fully answer that question, which isn't possible, really. All we can do is examine some possible reasons why some relationships stand up to all the outside pressure of life and others do not. Jen mentioned the fact that we hear people say things like, "You are not the man slash woman I married. You've changed," which implies that a lot of people do change, but oftentimes it is not a positive change. Jen suggested, as we have seen in our marriage, people should be changing. We should grow and change together. We should be connecting, communicating, coming to the table, quote unquote, to work through any conflict or trial life throws at us together. If any relationship does not include many of the elements we have discussed in detail on these broadcasts, how can a relationship last? Authenticity, openness, communication, growth are just a few of the things we believe are essential in order to attain long lasting relationships. Do relationships fail because they do not contain these elements? Do people in general fail to understand that change should happen together in a positive way rather than in a negative direction? What if one person is growing and changing and the other person remains stagnant? Can a relationship survive when a person is growing and the other is not? Shouldn't people be growing and changing together? As I said at the beginning, I've looked at the reasons relationships fail for a long time. I have even asked questions of people who have remained together for a long time and received various answers as to why they were able to stay together when many others do not. My dad's parents, Leo and Rhoda, were married for over 70 years. Like many others of these long term married folks, they said that marriage can be difficult, but you have to stick with it. And in their case, they relied on God to sustain them. As always, I know many do not believe in God, so He is not involved in their lives or marriage. But for those that do, what does it look like to rely on God in this way? For us, it simply means inviting Him into the marriage in every way and reading His Word for guidance. It is that simple, and it certainly was the reason my grandparents cited for their longevity. I thought it was interesting after the fact that they did not even mention communication or authenticity or any other of the things we mentioned earlier. I know their marriage was not always strong as it ended up being. They had a very rough patch early on that almost ended it before it really began. In fact, my grandma left the home for a short time, and the way my grandpa told it, it forced him to change the way he communicated with her for their future. My Aunt Becky filled this in a little bit for me. She stated that Grandpa Leo had difficulty sharing his feelings and listening to his wife's. She was emotional in his eyes, and he was stoic and kept his emotions to himself. He worked on himself and opened up more. Of course, as many times the case, it takes two people to fight and two people to heal in any relationship. My grandma had her own issues that she needed to work on, and she did. But it was Leo, my grandfather, that did the initial change that led to the marriage getting better. And grandma coming home had a long-term relationship which endured until his death in 2017 and followed by hers in 2018. There's a lot to learn from their marriage and any marriages that endure. There's no way we will get to the bottom of how any person can have a long lasting relationship in one broadcast. As always, we do not intend to do that, but we hope our asking questions and answering them will help each of you to ask your own questions and figure out what works best for you in your lives and relationships. Thanks again to John for the suggestion. Please submit any topics you would like us to address on TSL, and we would love to follow suit. All right, there we go. So that's the topic, and that's the write up for tonight. And very much looking forward to hopping into all this. And I also want to say hello to I am Annie. Welcome, Annie. We're glad that you're here. And I don't see, let's see, make make sure I didn't miss anyone else. I thought I saw Journey's Wake pop in here. Did I see him, or was that my imagination? Hmm. Scrolling. Maybe that was my imagination. Okay. I don't see him. I don't know why I thought. Oh, there he is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going crazy. Hello, Journey's Wake. Glad that you're here as well. Okay. All right. So let's get into this. So one of the very first questions that we can discuss is, why does love not last? And the follow up to that is, why do relationships end? So why? Kind of the same thing, but it just sounded poetic when I wrote it. Why does love not last, or why do relationships end? I probably combine those two. What about you, Jen? Do you want to tackle this one first? Why does love not last?
Could I go second?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll go first. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, I think, and as I said, I have done a lot of thinking about this, and a lot of it was because, I mean, even long before my first marriage, which ended up not lasting, I was just fascinated by relationships, and I'll just say, I have a degree in psychology, and part of that degree, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to get a degree in psychology and go that route in order to become a counselor, or the other route that was suggested, which is to become a social worker. And so, as a result of that, I took a lot of sociology classes. So, one of the ones I took of the many sociology classes was marriage and family. I mean, that was the whole topic. And
Hmm.
in that, uh, sociology does have a lot of statistics, and that's where I got the original statistics of uh, the divorce rate and things like
Yeah.
that. As well as that, we did studies on the 1800s and community, how different things were back then. Back then, I mean, I'm sure not everyone, but a lot of families lived in the same house and they worked together. A lot of them were farmers. And so you had your grandparents, the parents, and their kids working alongside each other all day, eating together, sleeping in the same house, going to church together in some cases. I mean, it was a small community within a larger community
Yeah.
where you would rely on your neighbors. If you needed to put a barn up really quick, everybody would get their hammer and their tool belt and come over there and help you build your barn. Now I
Yeehaw.
realized, yeah, right. I realized that, especially in the city, nobody's building a barn anymore. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's just a different world that we live in here in 2021 than it was in the 1800s. But still, the point was, and what we studied, the things that they did back then, which seemed to have a more cohesive bringing together of people, starting with the family unit and then working its way out into the community. And I was just fascinated by that. We could do a whole nother broadcast probably on just community itself and how that's changed. But
Oh, yeah.
specifically, yeah, but specifically, marriages were very different back then. In reading the statistics now, as opposed to when I was taking the class, there were plenty of articles about when it really took the dive. So in 1800s, the average was about 9 or 10%. I mean, that's how different it was back then. And then up in the 30s, it went up a little bit, like 15, maybe 20% in the 40s. Same thing with the 50s. And then in the 60s, it went from like 20% and jumped all the way up to over 50% in the 60s and 70s. So I don't know specifically what was going on in those 2 decades. I didn't take a deep dive into that to determine it. But all we know is that, according to statistics that anybody can find on their own, that's when it really changed. And then it's hovered around that. And I read another article that said that since the 80s, it has slowly gone down. The divorce rate's gone down a little bit, but we're talking percentage points. If it was in the 80s, 57%, it started to go down to just over 50%, around 52%. So anyway, all of that talk to say that more people get divorced than stay married. So, what are some of the reasons why it doesn't last? So, in that same sociology class that I took, they cited statistics that say that married couples live longer, that they enjoy their work more. If you have kids, if you have a family, also tend to live longer. I'm sure some people would argue that point who have kids that give them a hard time, like my kids are going to kill me. But yeah, they seem to having a family seems to help longevity and help you live longer than a single person. So that was what the study was done against an unmarried person. I always thought that was interesting. That and it makes sense to me. I remember being single. It wasn't that long ago, and I was single most of my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm much happier now in the relationship I'm in, but of course that depends on what kind of relationship you have. I wasn't as happy for the almost 3 years that I was in my first marriage, and the two things don't compare at all to each other. So, what are some of the reasons love doesn't last? Um, the biggest reason that I have seen is finances. Finances seems to be the biggest thing that breaks couples apart, and that can be anything from one of the people not working, husband or the wife is unwilling to work, and it's all on one person, and they get tired of it after a while. That's a reason. People fighting and not being able to get along. Affairs is another one. Why marriages don't last. And I could go on, but it seems like I'm talking a lot, and we're trying to end at a good time tonight. So I'll just stop there. We can't possibly go through every reason why a marriage doesn't last, but I gave a couple there. So, Jen, do you want to weigh in on anything I said, or do you want to add anything to the list? What are some reasons you think?
I don't think you mentioned this, but I think the biggest thing is a lack of connection.
Oh yeah,
Um, I think staying connected is incredibly important, and it does, for most people, take effort. I think if you really, really like each other, if you really dig each other's company, it does. It's not. It's very effortless.
yeah, it can be. Yeah,
Yeah. But some people, it takes more effort to stay connected, and um, in the meaningful ways that it would be for each person. You know what I mean? Not just like, hey, this is what I did today.
yeah,
What did you
right.
do?
Yeah, how
That's part
boring
of
is
it.
that? I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, you and I talk about how our days went, but my
Yeah.
gosh, we talk about so many other deeper
Some other
things.
things. Yeah.
That's hardly a blip on the radar. Just how your day went.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're going to get into some other, I don't want to like ruin
right.
the other questions by getting into some other things, but that would be my biggest. I think a lot of things, like you had mentioned, like affairs.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that you mentioned that I think the underlying issue is a
Right.
lack of connection or
Well,
losing connection.
yeah. So before we get to Glenn, so that is something we're going to talk about through another question later. But I mean, it's a fair point. I was just going to mention. So I mentioned finances being an issue. Now you and I have had a lot of pretty much. I mean, not right from the beginning because when we first got together when you moved here, we'd sold the townhouse. And so we really had a great start. For many months, we were able to weather the whole virus situation when a lot of people were not working. We weren't working either, but we had the money from the townhouse. So it started out great financially. But then since then, we have really struggled, and I do not feel like it has had any effect on our relationship. And that's because of the connection, because of the communication. We talk about it. There's no
Yeah.
secrets. I'm not hiding things from you.
Yeah.
You're not hiding things from me. We have discussions about the situations that we're in, and we talk about, solutions, and we work together on it. So,
Yeah. If
um,
anything, it's brought us closer together, which is great.
I would agree. I would agree.
Um,
So when I mention these things, it doesn't mean it applies to everyone. I mean, I'm sure we're not the only ones that have had financial struggles, and they stay together. Um, referring back to my grandparents, I mean, they had financial struggles. I mean, both of them worked. So this was back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s before my grandfather retired, and then my grandma retired shortly thereafter. My grandpa used to say because he lived so long that he ended up being retired longer than he ever worked, and that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So during the years that he was retired and they had no income, you would think that they would have gotten money from the government because he's a World War II veteran. And I get all riled up about this, but the amount of Social Security he put into working, and they took out of his check every year. Seems like that would be enough. But what they do is they don't count on people living that long into their 90s. He was 94 when he died, so they don't count on that. And they had to get two mortgages on the house that they'd already paid off in order to just pay their normal bills. So that didn't split them apart. I mean, they stayed together right till the end. So
Yeah.
I said all that to say that just because that is one of the reasons it's listed as a big reason why relationships don't last doesn't necessarily mean in any case, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the thing that does it. The second reason, I would think that cheating on your spouse would be number one, but it's not. Finances are number one, and then having affairs. So fortunately, Jen and I don't have to worry about that either. So
No.
that's right off the table. Thank God. I would never do that, and I don't believe Jen would either. So it's
Nope.
not something you have to worry about. Before we get to Glenn, Helene came in, so we'll say hello to her, and also Rachel came in. So welcome, ladies. We're glad that you're here. Okay, Glenn, you're up on this one. What are some reasons you think? Why does love not last, or why do relationships end? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to get pretty pragmatic on these answers. Why does love not last? Well, I think love does last. I think what we're really discussing here is that there really wasn't love in the first place.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
Oh, dang.
So it wasn't love. So
That's what I'm suggesting.
okay, great. So
Because I think there's two different questions. Why does love not last, and why do relationships not last? I think they're two different things. Totally.
great.
Good point.
Well, I don't feel as dumb as I did a few minutes ago. They're not the same question. So why does love not last? So let's tackle that one first, because I think it's fascinating what you said. So you're saying you don't think that they ever loved each other. Does that imply that if the love is real, then it will last?
Not necessarily. Two people
Okay.
can love each other but not have a relationship.
Okay. What does that look like?
Well, I don't like to keep using the example, but two people can be in different countries and
Okay.
can't find a way to be physically together. That doesn't mean they don't love each other, and that doesn't mean it's not authentic.
Oh yeah, yeah. I wasn't implying that, but so yeah. So when you were uh, dating, for lack of a better word, dating my mother, she's living in the States and you live in Australia, but you still had a relationship, and I mean, it didn't end up lasting, but I don't believe it mainly the distance that did that. I don't think it was just that, right?
Oh man, the
Throwing you under the
relationship,
bus.
right? The relationship did not end.
Okay.
Just the form of it changed.
Okay. Interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool perspective.
So a relationship doesn't necessarily. Okay, so if you the love doesn't necessarily end, but the part that was the fascinating to me is the implication that they didn't really love each other. The reason why that's fascinating to me is because I think a lot of people, they have the chemicals, and we've discussed this before. So they meet, they quote unquote fall in love, and then they get married, and the average shelf life of the chemicals that last, or in other words, the honeymoon period, last less than 2 years, generally speaking. Now, maybe there are people that it goes on longer than that. But as we've discussed before, Jen and I were fully aware of this, and I learned about it in that very same class, the marriage and family sociology class that I took, and that's when that started for me. I just found it fascinating, and I remember we even watched a video on just the falling in love part. It was like an hour long documentary. I don't remember who did it. But it was all about the chemicals, and it had close-ups of an eye, how the pupils dilate when the chemicals
Yeah.
flood your system and things like that. Very fascinating documentary. And so then the study was about when the chemicals leave, or they die down. If the relationship is just based on that, then you have to focus on other things in order to maintain the relationship. If it's just based on the chemicals and the chemicals go away, then what are you left with? So I think I would agree with you, Glenn, that in a lot of cases in divorce and these relationships ending, they might have said, "I love this person." They might have agreed, "Hey, I love you," but that doesn't seem to always be the case, especially if when the chemicals change, all of a sudden that's where the term "I fell out of love with you." I think that's what that's related to. I don't know.
Well, I'm
Anyway,
suspicious of chemicals.
right? Yeah.
But, well, I can relate. I mean, the one that has lasted wonderfully is the one where there wasn't that sort of chemical reaction. It's holistic, but it's not that, the chemicals. So, and all
Right,
the others didn't as such.
right.
So, yeah, I'm suspicious of chemicals.
I understand. Well, so for me, Jen and I definitely had chemicals, but we talked about it even while the chemicals were going on. I discussed with her my theory on the chemical thing. And so we focused on other things. And because we were friends first, so there was more of a relationship based on friendship that happened first. And I think that's true too. There are relationships where people began as friends, and statistically speaking, those last longer than just the meet cute situations where two people meet in a bar, or two people meet out somewhere, and then all of a sudden they hit it off, and their relationship is based on these same chemicals that Glenn is suspicious of. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. If it's just based on that and there's nothing
Yeah,
else
we've talked
underneath
about this before because the chemicals end up going away.
it.
So then a lot of people think, oh, well, I must have fallen out of love with this person.
Right,
If you're basing it on the chemicals, that's dangerous.
right, right. I would agree with that.
Yikes.
Gragu came in the chat. So hello, Gragu. Hope you're doing all
I
right.
think Grogu, is it
Grogu.
Grogu?
I
I
don't
think
know.
it is Celine.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause
Hello,
Yoda,
hello,
Baby
Celine,
Yoda.
with the baby Yoda, Gragu or Grogu or whatever his name is.
It's a ragu.
Yeah,
No,
right.
we had spaghetti tonight. Sorry, I got pasta on the brain.
It was really great spaghetti and spicy meatballs.
Mm.
It was fantastic.
Hey,
All
Cripps,
right,
I just want to add one thing, and I
please,
just my memory just twigged. I did
please.
discuss this with Annie, and I remember saying, oh, Sandra said this about only like a week ago or so. She said to me, "You were the only one night stand I ever had that stayed," and I said, "Well, you didn't ask me to leave." I thought that was quite hilarious, actually.
That's really good.
It is. It is. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it became more than a one night stand for sure. I mean, you guys are
One life
still,
stand.
yeah,
That's
one
it.
life stand.
We're here for
I like
the
that.
duration.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about. The question is, how do you make your relationship be long term? And I think now I would have to actually ask John, or he would have to say, maybe you can put that in the chat, John. Why you asked the question. I mean, I did the best I could based on the question that you posed to try to get into your brain a little bit. I suppose I could have reached out to you for more more explanation, but I would assume that you're asking the question because I don't know if you're in a relationship, but it seems like that may be something that you're interested in. A lot of people are, and so there's a lot of these short-term relationships out there, especially now with the apps that you have, just dating apps and online dating and things like that. It seems like there's a lot of people uh, at least wanting to meet new folks and to have relationships, but um, I'm sure there are people out there that would love to have a long-term relationship, especially with divorce being so high. I'm sure if you talk to everyone that had a divorce, there are some at least that wish they could, not go through that again. It's not a fun process. I'm never going to go through it again, and I know that, no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind. In fact, I would have stayed single rather than take a risk of going through a divorce. I would have had to have been absolutely sure. And I know you'd say, well, how can you ever be absolutely sure? Well, I think you can. I think when your relationship is strong and it's based on other things, deeper things, I think you can know that it's not going to ever end as a result of divorce. I mean, that's just my opinion. Uh,
Same.
Thank you, Jen. Okay. So, how do people who once loved one another enough to join their lives together at some point fall out of love? Let's talk about this term, fall out of love. What do you think about this term, Jen? Fall out of love. Is that even possible?
You know, Glenn's got my brain a whirring like
Yeah,
he always
yeah,
does
yeah.
with his comment about, that they weren't in love to begin with.
Right.
It's just got me munching on it. I can
Hmm.
picture my brain munching on that comment. Um, because there's part of me that wants to say, I do think someone can fall out of love. Um,
Okay.
Now, okay, well, like in a situation where someone has misled you as to who they are and what their core beliefs are and what matters to them and what makes up who they are and their faith and stuff.
Yeah.
If someone misleads you and they're convincing about it,
Yeah.
I feel like somebody can truly love that person that they've portrayed.
Ooh.
And if they start to change, and we've talked about narcissism quite a bit, and sorry
Right.
if some of y'all are rolling your eyes, uh, um, you know, I think that and maybe that's not so much of a falling out of love with someone, but it's recognizing the person that I fell in love with didn't exist.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little different, but and then I flip to the other side with what Glenn mentioned. Um, if you're in love with someone, if you're truly in love with someone, if you truly love them,
Mm,
can even if they change,
mm,
if it's real love, wouldn't you still love them?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, there may be someone who still truly loves someone, but they decide, this isn't healthy for me to be in this anymore, or to stick it out, or to
Yeah.
say, even if you've changed and I don't like some of the things that you've changed into, I'm going to stick it
Right.
out because I love you. So
Wow.
this can go into a lot of different directions. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
sure could. Sure could. So, just based on what you said, you're talking about someone misrepresenting themselves. I believe that's what happened in my first marriage, if you can even call it that. I believe that this person, uh, because we talked enough, and I'm definitely someone that communicates what I would like in a relationship,
yeah, you're direct.
because we did the eHarmony thing, which is a little different than some of the other dating services. It's way more. It has way more in-depth questions to
Yeah.
determine whether two people are compatible. So you can be compatible by answering questions in a similar way,
Hmm.
and the I can't think of the word. Oh geez, the mechanism. That's not the right word.
Oh, you're talking about the
Yeah, yeah, right, right. So
dang it, it just went in my head too. The algorithm.
the algorithm, thank you.
There you
You
go.
you saved me. You saved me. So the algorithm that they put together on that website will take the questions that each of you answer, or yeah, that's right. The questions that each of you answer, put those together, and try to make a try to make a determination whether you guys will work, whether it's compatible or not. So we were, according to the algorithm, highly compatible. And at first, it seemed like that to me. Of course, it wasn't just her misrepresenting herself. It was me seeing red flags before the marriage, and I have talked about this so many times. But I'll just say briefly, I did decide to overlook some red flags for various reasons. Now, I wouldn't do that again. Unfortunately, I don't need to be in that situation again. But I did learn from that. So if you decide like I did to overlook red flags, then you kind of get what you deserve in that way. At least I felt like I did. But I felt like some things that she was honest about in the questions, and then other things that may be what she wanted when she answered the questions. It may be in
Yeah.
her own mind what she thought. She thought she was answering truthfully. That's the point. But when it came to putting it into action, they didn't match up at all. So that was where the problem was, in my opinion. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll I'll let Glenn go, and then I'll answer the fallout of love question. So, Glenn, how do people who once loved one another enough to join their lives together at some point fall out of love? And based on your other comment about them not being really in love in the first place, maybe you can fill that out a little bit more. Is it possible? Do you even think that it's possible, this fall out of love? Let's assume that they really did love each other. Is it possible to lose that? What do you think about that?
I think we've got less than 2 minutes, so I'm happy to answer, but I would like to just take a pause and just get this
Okay.
up and running again. Thanks.
Let's do that. Okay, thank you, Glenn. All right, guys. So again, we're dealing with the chat. I've got enough time to tell you guys we'll be right back. So just bear with us and talk amongst yourselves, and we'll be back momentarily. Thank you.
Hey, hey.
Hey. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I got your message, Jen, and of course, if you okay, I see the response. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you know if it's just too
Yep.
much.
Yep. Gotcha. Gotcha. So we'll wait for Glenn to let us know when we're up and running again, and then we'll have Glenn answer his question.
We're running.
Okay. I think we're back, guys. If someone could just give us a heads up in the chat and let us know that you can hear us, and then I'll repeat the question a little bit, and then Glenn can give it a shot. Well, I'm assuming you can hear me, so I'll say hello to Debbie.
Hey, Debbie.
Hello, Debbie. As usual, we're glad to have you. I'm glad you're able to stop by. Okay, I don't see where anyone.
No, we're just waiting.
Yes.
John has a really good question in the chat too.
Okay, so let's
After Glenn answers.
Yeah, let's let Glenn answer, and then we'll go right to John's question. Okay, so again, the question: how do people who once loved one another enough to join their lives together at some point fall out of love? And then, based on your original comment, saying that you didn't believe that they were really in love in the first place, and then so my follow up would be, if that's true, do you think it's possible, assuming that they really do love each other and it's not just based on the chemicals, but there's some kind of love there, is it possible to fall out of love, as the phrase implies? Is that possible?
I think if two people bring 100% authenticity to the table,
Uh-huh.
and that's love, I don't think you can fall out of love. I think if you do, you have to question the connection at the beginning.
Wow. See, I would completely agree. To me, if it is actually love, then nothing is going to tear that apart. Um, I do agree with, the people that I've talked to, not just my grandparents, but other people that have been married a long time, and a lot of them say some of the same things. Marriage is tough, is one of them, and you got to stick with it. So you got to hang in there. My grandmother Rhoda, when I was in my first marriage, she had my mother. My mother inscripted things on stones. She had various stones. One of them she gave to me was a Bible verse, and then my grandmother had my mother make a stone, and it said something about guard your marriage. That was important to her, and she felt like she had guarded her marriage, and that's one of the reasons why felt like she was married for so long. And she saw so many, some of her own children go through divorce, uh, and it was important to her. So she had conversations with me about, okay, you're married now, and it's important for you to guard that. Like, I think what she meant by that was that, be on guard in your marriage, because things are going to happen. There are going to be
Yeah.
outside forces that try to tear you apart, and you can't just go into it blind. You have to be aware of that, and I was aware of that. I think sometimes there's not much you can do if the other person is not on the same page with you in many different ways, but certainly in the area of sticking with it. The other person isn't willing to stick with it, there's not a lot you can do, and that was certainly the case in my previous marriage. And thank
Yep.
God.
But Crip, circumstances can arise
Right,
that no matter how much love that's authentic is there,
right.
it may mean that you have to move on, because you could have someone who's brain dead in a hospital in a bed that's never going to wake up. Well, what are you going to do with that?
Well, that answer is easy. If that happened to Jen, I would be there every day, and I would take care of her. I would never divorce Jen or leave her because she's brain dead. I mean, I wouldn't want her to stay in that place, and that's another conversation as to whether she would want that.
Yeah.
If there was no way she was ever going to come back. And speaking personally for me, I've made it clear to Jen, if that ever happened to me, I don't want to be kept on machines that are keeping
Yeah.
me alive if I can't communicate and I don't have this part of me that she can relate to and loves. I mean, that's another conversation, but I wouldn't leave her, while she was still living. I wouldn't do that. But that's interesting that you bring that up, because that in my studies, that's what I've seen. Or someone gets in a horrific car accident and their face is badly disfigured, or they get paralyzed either from the neck down to the waist down or whatever, and then the other person leaves. They take off. So to me, in situations like that, I don't think that the love was real. And I think that people that just leave when something happens to their spouse, that's terrible.
But Cripps, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think there's this is a trait of humanity that not everybody can cope. I, I mean, I don't think it's as simple as saying they haven't really loved the person. I couldn't make that comment. Just I just know that some people simply can't cope with the situations that come up. It's a tough one.
Okay. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I guess I should have phrased it. This is my opinion. I feel pretty strongly that I would never leave Jen for any reason, regardless of if, I mean, God forbid something horrible happened to her. And yeah, even if I couldn't cope, I mean, even if it was difficult and I needed to get outside help, I mean, there are so many options. If a person can't handle it on their own, it seems like there are other options to that. Getting help, having family or friends help, or getting a nurse, or maybe you can't afford a nurse, but you find someone to help you deal with the situation. I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, yeah, maybe it's hard, but if the idea is that you just can't cope with it, I'm out of here. Um, I would agree with you though that it's not as cut and dry as I responded fairly quickly, and so I'm taking on board what you said, that it's not as simple as that. Okay, so I'll definitely think more about that.
Well, Sandra would say, if let's just say it was she that was in the hospital on a respirator and there was no hope, she'd say, "Glenn, get on with your life." And I would say, to my mind, that is the ultimate act of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Remember what I said to you, Jen? There are certain things that if it happened to me, I would want you to be happy, and I would probably struggle with telling you to leave. You know,
Wait, in what situation?
if I were paralyzed from the one I used was if I was paralyzed from the neck down. I don't. I'm not going to be gross here, but I don't want someone wiping me and taking care of me in that way. Someone that I
Yeah.
love and care about. That I would be mortified by that, and that's just one example. Um, but I'm not going to make you leave. Like if you agreed to do that and we couldn't get someone else to take care of it, I'm going to let you make your own decisions. But I'm saying there's a part of me that wouldn't want you to have to deal with that. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Crip, that's an interesting one.
Okay.
I know we're going on about, we're only at the top of the show, but I mean, I think once again, it's very circumstantial. Some people couldn't cope with wiping someone else's backside,
Right.
but others would willingly just get
Right.
stuck in, and it is what it is. So
Right.
we're all human. We all deal with this differently.
Right. That
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. I think once you take care of children, I don't have any kids of my own, but I'm a godfather, and I took care of two infants for about 3 years. And part of that is changing their diapers. And yeah, it's not my favorite thing. I think it's very different if it's an adult. I mean, very different than a small infant, small baby, but it's the same thing. It just is, to be an adult and not to be an infant, and you're not even aware that you're doing this and someone else is having to clean up after you. It's a completely different situation to be an adult and know what's happening and not be able to do anything about it. Okay, so I believe we should probably move on, and let me scroll back up to find John's question. So John says, one question I would have toward people seeking to be bound in marriage is, what in the world are you truly looking for before diving in? Wow, that is a great question. What are you looking for before diving in terms of being married? Jen made a good point before the broadcast when we were making up the slides and saying that, we shouldn't just say marriage, that some people aren't going to get married, and that's okay. Everyone has a different opinion about that, but people living together or in some kind of relationship. So we'll leave room for that. There are people, but in terms of John's question, uh, what are you looking for before diving in? What do you think, Jen?
Connection.
Yeah.
And sharing your life with someone,
Yeah.
sharing your experiences, not just yours, but sharing in someone else's as well, and
Yeah.
sharing in yours together as a whole, as a
Yeah.
couple.
Well, I would agree with all that. And we've done so many broadcasts on this whole authenticity and openness thing. Um, you were saying earlier about talking about narcissism, people rolling their eyes. Maybe people are rolling their eyes when we keep saying openness and authenticity. We keep pounding on these same points over and over again, but I feel they really work. I feel it's so important. So, in framing John's question, what are they? That is a great question for two people to ask each other, John. Frankly, what are your expectations? What are you looking for? What do you want out of this marriage before diving in? Now, I think that's what premarital counseling is supposed to do. And even if you're involved in a church, a pastor will meet with you, and hopefully he would ask some of these questions. Kind of hedge your expectations or talk about what they are. I know my mom did a lot of counseling, and that was important to her, talking about expectations themselves. And, I've talked about that on various broadcasts, because expectations either can be a good thing and benefit the marriage, or they can be a marriage killer, in my opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't know what the expectations are of the other person, it can be devastating, because you have one person that's not communicating their expectations, but yet they still expect it, and the other person's not ever living up to it out of ignorance. They just have no idea what the other person expects. And then other times you don't say up front when you get married the certain things that you expect. For example, someone might expect, I want you to have no other job other than to make $100,000 a year. As long as you're making $100,000 a year, that's what I expect. It doesn't matter to me what you do, but that's my expectation. And they don't share it. And then the person gets married and they get whatever job they can get. And the other person's just seething in anger because their spouse is not meeting up to this expectation. That it's a silly example probably, but I mean, who makes $100,000 a year? I mean, I know some people do, but I would be thrilled to be able to make that. But it's not my main focus. We're focused on other things, but I know that there are people out there that are focused more on some of the surface, what I would consider surface things. Anyway, anyone else want to comment on John's question?
Yep.
Well, go ahead, Glenn.
Well, I'm telling you straight up, big boobs and a red sports car don't do it for me. So,
Right.
but what does is shared values to start. That's the prerequisite before you even get from. That's first base.
Yeah.
I mean, if your values aren't aligned, where do you go without that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John had said earlier too. He said, "I'm not one to opine since I've never been married, but I really believe that the acceptance / commitment to their agreed morality structures are paramount." And then he goes on to say, morality, what is defined as what is right and wrong. So that's kind of John's statement. So, and then he says, such as we're going to stick together through all the fiery trials of life, excluding grave circumstances, of course.
I find that difficult to agree with.
Okay.
Personally,
Well,
because I think trying to define expectations is extremely difficult. Like if we take morality, here's an example. This is what I'm saying a bit here. Sandra and I said, if you want to sleep with somebody else, bring it. The deal is you bring it to the table and we talk about it, and then we first of all say, well, why do you want to do this? What's the rationale here? And is it something that can be healed by communication at the table? Because usually a lot of people sleep with other people because they're either dissatisfied with something that's going on in the relationship and they're not saying what it is. So basically it could be for a number of reasons, but so the deal is that for us there's really not boundaries. It's really just talk about it. Just make sure before you step the line, you come and put it on the table. I mean, that puts a fair deal of pressure on people because affairs are usually clandestine, but having to declare yourself up front before you do it, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true.
That's an example. So I don't like the boundaries that John's sort of imposing or attempting to sort of direct the terms of the relationship before it even happens.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but as anyone can, they can decide for themselves what things are important for them. And if morality is important to John, and it's important that whoever he decides to have a relationship with, and they work that out between themselves, and
Of
they
course,
make,
shared values.
yeah. Yeah. So just real quick, Janet says, for those in Christ, covenants are very important. We are announcing a promise to each other, the community, and the Lord to become one in the eyes of the Lord. Yeah, thank you for that, Janet. So of course, for people that are believers or followers of Scripture and things like that, yeah, a covenant is very important, and marriage should be important. Obviously, we know, and based on Glenn's comment, that other people that don't have that or don't really mind those things, they're going to have their own morality. They're going to have their own lines in the sand, so to speak. And in Glenn's case, he's talking about just basically communicating whatever it is. And I don't disagree with that. I think there are plenty of marriages that the people would say, "Hey, it's a Christian marriage. We're basing this on Scripture," and they still don't communicate, and it can still end. I mean,
Yeah.
by the way, in these studies that I've done, it's not just non-Christian couples that are going through divorce. I mean, there's a whole different study on people that claim to be Christians, and they get divorced just as often. Believe it or not, they get divorced just as often as people that aren't believers or
Believers, yeah.
churchgoers. So, so the just saying that you have morality or just saying that you're a Christian, I guess my point is that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stay together. Maybe it should, but it doesn't. So these things that we were mentioning in all these broadcasts, the openness and the authenticity that are so important to us, the three of us, and we may disagree on a lot of things, but I think on these three tenets, I think we all agree. It's important to be open, it's important to be authentic, and it's important to communicate or, come to the table, as we talked about in the previous broadcast. Very important to all of us. Okay. Did everyone answer those questions? I'm going to move forward with this so we can end on time. We have 1 hour. Guys, we're going to try to end right on time tonight. Jenn didn't share this, but she's struggling with a little headache. Not a little headache. I didn't mean to belittle it or make it small. She's feeling a little bit better, but initially, before the broadcast, she was really, really struggling. So we just all talked about not going long tonight. So we're gonna try to wrap things up a little bit. And so far, we've been, as is a lot of times the case, we can spend a lot of time on just the first few questions. So we'll try to move through these a little quicker, and I'll play a big part in that because I went on and on at the beginning without even really talking about a question, just telling everyone all these classes I took and whatnot. So I'll do better. Okay, so the next question. So, how do you have a long-term relationship? Now, again, we're not going to get to the bottom of this tonight. So, when I'm asking this question, just give some ideas. How do you think? What are some of the keys to success to have a long-term relationship, Jenn?
Gosh. One of the big ones is no secrets.
Wow.
Especially in the beginning. When you're coming to the table
Yeah.
with someone and there's, mutual interest and
Yeah.
caring, and
Mhm.
you guys are kind of heading into that direction of getting into a relationship, it's just so important to put everything on the table.
Mhm.
And it's very scary, don't get me wrong. It's hard, it's scary. There's always that thought in the back of your head, like, what if I share this with them and they run?
Right.
But I'm not going to word it as beautifully as Glenn does, but
Well.
it's that idea of putting the cards on the table. If someone walks, if they find out something about you and they decide to walk, well, then
Yeah.
let them walk.
Hmm.
Someone that's meant for you is going to see your cards on the table.
Wow.
and accept you and love you just as you are, with all the experiences and the
Mm,
mistakes and the
beautiful.
issues that you deal with or had dealt with, or and not only that, but it's for lack of a better phrase, it's doing them a service. You're what- portraying, what is the word I'm looking for? You're giving them a real time, honest portrayal of who you're bringing to the table, of yourself,
Yeah. Yeah. An
and not.
accurate portrayal of who you are.
There you go, accurate portrayal. I couldn't think of the word.
That's okay. I do it too. Yeah.
So I think that is a biggie, a
Yeah.
big biggie.
Wow. That was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. No secrets. Yeah. So, uh, when Jen and I first started talking, I did what I guess some people would consider a relationship ender, because I shared with her all the stuff, all the mistakes, and all the things that I've done, and talked about my divorce, and I really just laid it all out there.
Yeah,
Because I believe in that. That whole thing
yeah,
about coming to the table, that's not just like a passing thing. That's, oh yeah, guys, come to the table, and I don't do it. Like, that's something that I think is incredibly important. And as I
yeah,
mentioned earlier, I was not willing to go through a divorce. So I was going to tell Jen everything right from the start, and give her a chance to stay or go.
yeah.
And instead of her going, she didn't have a lot to share on her end of all this bad stuff, but she shared some things with me.
Not yet. I'm
You
just
know,
kidding.
yeah. She's saving the best for last. She
Right.
shared with me about her relationships and things that she did, and we talked about it. And so it was on the table from the very beginning, no secrets. And I can honestly say that and this isn't bragging, this is just saying, there's no secrets. There's nothing that she's going to discover about me that I haven't told her. There's
Yeah.
no time bomb waiting to be stepped on, and then it blows everything up. That's not going to happen.
You mind if I share the story with
Please.
your sister?
Yeah, please do.
I think you have shared on the show about the DUI that you got
Yeah,
when you were
yeah, yeah.
younger.
I
Okay.
have. I have. Yeah.
So, this was in the mix of a lot of things Jason shared with me about his past.
Mhm.
And I think when I first, was I visiting, or had I already
Yeah.
moved here?
I think it
Okay.
was, you were coming for a visit one of the first
Yeah.
times you met Shannon, my sister and her husband and family.
Yeah. And we were playing some card games or something with them. And Shannon was getting kind of competitive, I think, with the game. And she kind of made this little sisterly jab at Jason
Yeah.
about the DUI that he got. And I don't remember exactly what she said. And it wasn't
Yeah.
the healthiest thing to do or say.
Mm-mm.
And she's human, like
No.
we all are. Um, but it kind of shocked me. And I thought
Yeah.
right away, I thought, oh my gosh, like, what if he had not told me about
Right.
this?
Right.
How would I have? Oh my, can you imagine the domino effect, that
Right.
would have had in our relationship, me finding out that way? And
Sure.
so
Sure.
again, this is why it's so important to share
Yeah.
everything. And this can get a little sticky, because we've talked about before how some people that are manipulative,
Yeah.
they share a bunch of things in the beginning, uh to have you share, and then it's used against you later, or used to manipulate you or whatnot. So you have to be careful. And I hate that it's that way. I hate that, it's like you want to be honest and upfront
Yeah.
and authentic, but at the same time, you know that you need to be careful. Make sure you trust, the person that you're opening up to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's possible. It's frustrating that our world's like that.
Yeah. And just real quick about that story. In fact, not only did you not get mad at me because I had already shared this with you, but you were mad at my sister
Yeah.
a little bit because she did that. And it
Yeah.
was not a good thing. It was not a sisterly, good, loving, sisterly thing to do, to bring that up, because she had no idea whether I'd discussed this with you or not.
Yeah.
So it could have been incendiary. I mean, it could have set things on fire, and
Yeah.
it was kind of thoughtless, actually.
Yeah.
And she and I have talked about it since then, and it's all good. But
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good.
yeah, 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 yeah. So that that was a good story. Thank you for sharing that. And so no secret. So, Glenn, do you have any comments to make on what Jen said, or do you want to make your own comment, or give me some good tips from your end of the board? How do you have long-term relationships, or how do you make your relationship last?
Well, I don't think you can make it last.
Okay.
You can't, because how many times do I said, "Oh, we've been married for 50 years," but
Mhm.
what they don't say, we've been married for 50 years, but we're effing miserable.
Oh, wow,
That's a good
that's
point.
that's a good point,
So that
and
the number of years. No, I'm not going with that one. So that's a question mark. I don't know what goes on within any two people's relationships, but if you're going to live in misery just for the sake of saying I'm married for 50 years, you can count
right.
me out.
Mm,
So how do you have well, I'd like to add the word healthy to that.
okay.
Healthy long-term relationships. Well, you
Yeah.
start with the right principles
Right.
of two healthy people coming together. Otherwise, it's going to go down the tube. 99% sure.
Yeah.
Or get healthy, or be working on it, or be aware of yourself. Look, all those things, but you start from a place that's just codependent or narcissistic. Boy, that's a slippery slope, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Just real quick, Jen, did you intend to hide John's comments?
No, no, I'm so sorry. I put my phone face down because looking at the chat was killing my brain. I'm so sorry. I must have accidentally touched the screen
I
and did
didn't.
something wonky.
I didn't
I'm
think.
so sorry, John.
I didn't think it was intentional. So, John, hopefully you're hearing us. That was not intentional.
Let me
Uh,
see if I can I undo it?
I can.
Okay. I'm so sorry, John. That was careless of me. Sorry.
I tried to. Oh, I tried to undo it and ended up doing it. What in the world? Hold on, guys. I apologize. Hold on. Uh,
There's a lot of hiding going on in these relationships.
There needs to be more honesty.
um, okay, I'm trying to.
My apologies, John.
Okay. Well, I don't know how. Okay, Jen, I think maybe unhidden. Yeah, I unhid him. Okay, I thought I did it again, but it didn't. Um, Jen, do you know how to unhide?
You know what?
Undelete.
I'm not sure I can from an iPhone. Oh wait, hold on. What in the world?
Hang on. View deleted me. I'm just clicking on those messages and they're coming up. Are they coming up on your chat?
Well, you can. You're a moderator, so you can view deleted messages. That's
There
not
you
a
go.
problem.
I'm just
But
going back, putting them on, and then John can take them out later which is
Yeah,
well,
so
okay.
it's letting me
that's
do
only
that
for
too.
you to view it. That's only
Oh,
for
bugger.
it's only for you to view it. I'm trying to.
You need a universal
Okay.
viewing.
So I did open. Oh, I did unhide him, but I'm not sure if Jen has to unhide him or not. In
But
order
see, they're
for
coming up on the broadcast.
John, can you try to type something in and just see if we're able to see you?
Oh, good grief! It did it on every single one.
Yeah. So when you do that, and I know it was accidental, when you do that, it hides all his comments. Now he does that anyway, generally. So I don't think that's an issue. I just want to make sure that he's able to comment if he wants
Okay.
moving
But they're
forward.
certainly coming out on the broadcast now, Crip, since I clicked on them.
For you, I don't see any
No,
comments
on the
from.
TSL broadcast, on the production software, it's showing the messages that I've undeleted.
Okay.
Thanks
Okay.
for checking that, Glenn. Sorry, guys. Good grief.
I do think that's because you're a moderator and you're able to.
Okay, I'm seeing John's messages now. He just said I can retype
Okay,
something
there you
if you
go.
want.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so sorry, guys. That was just an accident. Didn't mean to do that. John didn't say anything bad or anything like that. Okay, so let's move forward. Uh, Where were we?
Crap.
Glenn was.
Wasn't Glenn saying
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. Please
How do you
continue.
have long-term relationships? Start with
Yeah.
a good short-term one.
Okay. A
That's
good
advice.
short-term one. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Because yeah, sometimes you go into a relationship that you don't know where it's going to go, and you're bringing your authenticity and hoping the other person does too, and
Yeah.
then some red flags might happen, or you just never know, and then you could just say goodbye to it, and it could be a good experience,
Yeah.
learning experience, short-term relationship.
That's good. Well, overall, what Glenn is saying that I definitely agree with is adding the word healthy in it. And he does make a great point. I mean, there are a lot of people that, and in fact, sometimes if they're in a religion or have a religious background where divorce is shunned or ill spoken of, that I think do exactly what he's saying. They'll be miserable in the marriage, but they'll stay with it because the divorce is reprehensible to them, or other people will judge them if they get a divorce in certain communities. So they just stay with it, and that may not be a good to stay married just to be married, just for the longevity part, but it's not to grow and change and flourish together, and to be close. Um, So I think Glenn made a really good point. I would agree with that, and I like the short term. A good or a healthy short term relationship can definitely lead to a long term relationship for sure. Okay, so everyone answered those ones, I think, didn't they? I
Yeah,
don't have anything to add. Uh, I think you guys filled that out pretty well. I don't need to add anything to it.
did
Uh,
you say something about being authentic from the start? I mean, I guess that could fall underneath no secrets.
Oh, no, but we can say that. I mean, again, we talk a lot about these elements, and for me, openness, authenticity, and communication are the big three.
Yeah,
I like the no secrets, but that would be in the openness. That
yeah,
would fall under the openness category. But the being authentic,
yeah. Being yourself, making
yeah,
sure that you're yourself. And I know I've spoken of this before, but out of my own insecurities and just not even really knowing who I was, like I
mhm,
knew parts, but I just
right,
hadn't discovered myself, I guess.
right,
What I ended up doing in a lot of relationships early on was I got into the relationship and then I started to change myself sort of into the person I was with because I was afraid to lose them.
yeah,
And I understand all the ins and outs of why I did that and the
yeah,
fear, of abandonment and stuff that was attached to. But I ended up losing the relationships because the people didn't want to be in a relationship with themselves. They wanted to be in a relationship with me. And I just didn't get that. I didn't
yeah,
understand, and it wasn't even like I knew that I was doing it. I wasn't
right,
really conscious of it.
right,
So I think being yourself, and that falls underneath what I mentioned about, and of course the term flew out of my head again. Just making sure you're not portraying. That sounds like you're not being authentic, but um, what did you say? Accurately presenting yourself. Is that what you had said?
yeah.
Accurately portraying, but
Who you
portraying
are?
is not the right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
just making sure it's accurate. It's not
yeah.
some, farce
It's
or
not just a presentation. It's You're not a fake. You're
yeah,
not presenting a fake part of you,
yeah,
or pretending to be anybody. You're
not.
authentic in your
Yeah.
representation of who you are.
Yeah, because we've spoken too about, how in the beginning of relationships, a lot of people put their best foot forward,
Hmm.
and that's to a degree that's normal. But honestly, like let people see you be sad. Let people see you have moments of irritability. Like that's humanness. And it's going to happen. And if you're trying to stuff those little things away because you're trying to put your best foot forward, it's just not an accurate representation of a human being, not just yourself, just being human.
Well,
I'm laughing while Jen's talking because we tell each other I'm feeling grouchy.
Yeah.
I'm feeling grouchy today, and it's not her. Like if Jen says it, she's not saying I'm feeling grouchy toward you. She's just saying, I'm realizing I'm feeling grouchy today. And when she says that, my reaction is, okay, well, I love you when you're grouchy too. And it's true, I do. Jen is a delight. She's easy to love, guys. This is not me stretching and really working hard so that I can love her. No, she's an easy person to love. Some people are harder to love, but she's not. So when she tells me she's grouchy, I can't wait to see what grouchy Jen looks like. I can't wait to see what annoyed Jen looks like. And I have seen that a couple times, but generally she's pretty much delightful 100% of the time. She just really is. Now I know that not everyone's like that. I don't have an unrealistic perception of the fact that not everyone is 100% delightful all the time. Trust me, I've been around plenty of my friends that were married and seen a lot of them get divorced, and sometimes I understand exactly why. Sometimes it can be the other person, and they're very extremely hard to live with. Biblically speaking, Solomon said it's better to live on the corner of a house than with a contentious woman. Now, I think to be fair, he should have said something about the man too. It's not just the woman's fault for sure. But the point that's being made is, yeah, when you're living with someone that bickers and moans and groans and complains and yells at you all the time, that doesn't make for you looking forward to getting up every day and seeing this person.
Nope.
No, it doesn't. But when you have someone who is loving and kind and communicative and wonderful, and it just makes you look forward to waking up every day and seeing that person and spending time with them, and that's who Jen is. And when she tells me I hope she never gets mad at me, but sometimes she'll say I'm grouchy, and it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Even when she says something in a grouchy way, I have to try not to laugh because it just is so different, and it's just really a different relationship. I realize that I know that not everyone has that, but um, well, talking about different relationships, I've actually heard Glenn and Sandra the way they talk to each other sometimes, and that's different too.
F-bombs unite.
Yeah. But it's
There's
their
gotta be,
relationship.
yeah,
I'm not judging them. If they want to talk to each other that way, they can talk to each other that way, and that's you know
yeah.
that's their prerogative.
They're
Whatever
being
works for them.
authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no anger, malice, angst, or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not
Right.
we're not trying to make a point. It's banter. It's
Yeah.
just
Banter. Banter is
banter.
good, and relationships is great.
Yeah, just the words get used. It's probably words that
Yeah.
most people don't use.
Yeah. John
Yeah.
said about my comment, he said God didn't include the man because he figured that was obvious.
Huh?
Uh,
I don't get it.
I said Solomon should have
Oh,
been
okay.
man.
Yeah.
John said it's obvious. And he's right. I mean, yeah. I mean, men can be just as bicker some. That's not a word. They can be just bicker as much and complain as much and can be contentious as much as a woman can, for sure. Hello to Annette who just popped in. Glad to see you, Annette. Welcome. Okay. The next one is what elements in a marriage keep you together? So, what things when two people come together, how do they stay together? What do you think, Jen? What keeps a relationship together? What keeps people together?
Yeah. I know this is going to sound a little monotonous, but no secrets, communication, staying
Yeah.
connected. And we've touched on this a little bit during the show, but this whole idea of recognizing that we as people, we grow moment to moment.
Mhm.
And getting away from this idea that, when we get married and at the altar, we're striving to remain that person in that moment,
Yeah.
that when you met and when you all the chemicals, that's just not realistic. And I think some people, it's almost like growing and changing is sort of frowned upon or something. It's
Right.
weird. Whereas if you can embrace the fact that growing and changing is what we're made to do,
Yeah.
it should be exciting. It's a journey. It's an
Right.
adventure.
Right.
And if you can be with someone that embraces that within themselves and with the person they're with you, that's awesome because I mean, how boring of a relationship is it if you guys are both trying to maintain the people that you were during the chemicals or at the
Right.
altar and you don't change?
Right.
Like, I don't know. That doesn't sound exciting to me.
No, it doesn't to me either.
so,
Doesn't to me either.
so yeah, just, gosh, waking up in the morning and being able to be like, I wonder who Jason's going to be today. No, that sounds ridiculous, but just, just the fact that I know he is always processing life
Yeah.
and God and his experiences and what just everything and
Right.
sharing it with me. And when you both do that, it's just a fantastic thing to be able to, and not only that, but it actually puts things on the table to talk about,
Right.
to discuss, to mull over together, or even learn from each other. I mean, you and I learn from each other every day.
Yeah. True.
So that would be my suggestion.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. What about you, Glenn?
Too many elements to name, but I'm going to take the big picture approach.
Okay, great.
You open the front door and you say, okay, who wants to walk? There it is. Take it. Walk out.
Yeah.
If two people stay, that's what's keeping you. You've made a choice to stay together. What more do you need?
I like it. Make a choice.
Easy.
Uh, it essentially comes down to that, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
regardless of what things come from the outside or what kind of pressures come, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Are you going to stick with the person? Are you going to stay, or are you going to go?
Do you
And
want to be here?
yeah,
That's such a huge thing because
yeah,
you don't want to be. Surely people don't want to stay with someone who doesn't want to be there.
yeah.
Well, I don't. That's for sure.
No,
I'd rather
no,
say bye bye.
yeah, yeah. And yeah. I've talked to Jen about this before in the past too. I wouldn't want to be with someone that doesn't want to be with me. What good would that do? Uh, I don't have any desire for that. Um, in fact, when my ex gave me the separation letter, I I uh, I immediately went to a different place. I mean, I wasn't in that frame of mind of thinking that anything was wrong because she didn't communicate that with me. Everything seemed fine, and I've talked about this before. In
Yeah.
fact,
A lot of
the
couples do this.
yeah. So in February on Valentine's Day, in fact, I did do this. I went and found that message that I kept on my phone because it was so meaningful to me at the time, and I played it for her. I said, "This is what you said to me in February, and it's now April. It was the end of April at the time. So did this stuff not mean anything?" And she got really mad. She was like, "Oh, you're throwing this in my face." I said, "Yeah, I'm throwing it in your face because this makes no sense to me." But I didn't want to be with someone that didn't want to be with me. There wasn't any kind of, oh, please. I didn't beg her to stay. Now I did uh, initially, because we had said when we got together that if we ever encountered a problem, we promised, both of us promised as part of our marital agreement, that we would seek counseling. And that was important to me because I didn't want to just give up on a marriage if we encountered issues uh, that we promised. And we did three, after the separation letter, we did three counseling sessions. Or I'm sorry, one was before, just a general counseling. And in that session, she'd made the statement, "I don't think we're going to make it." And that was actually before the separation letter. So that was the first inkling. So technically there was an inkling that something was going on with her, but I didn't take it too seriously because she was very emotional and had a lot of anxiety and depression, as I've said before. So I thought it was just coming out of that. I didn't think it was anything serious, but it made me very angry. Even at the time, I was angry. So why would you say something like that? It's ridiculous. But yeah, getting to the point, I wouldn't want to be with someone that didn't want to be with me. So I like Glenn's open door policy.
Sorry.
What?
I'm like, wow, I spent 14 years with somebody that didn't want to be with me.
Right.
I'm just reflecting.
Oh, I got you. I got you. But
Yeah.
but you've talked before about why you did
Yes.
that. I
Yeah.
mean, when you feel like marriage is important to you, and you're a person that wants to stay and work it out, and on top of that, you feeling like he was your mission field,
Yeah.
like you were there to treat him with love in the hopes that he would respond to that in some way, and he just
Yeah.
never would.
Nope. And I kept trying harder.
I get it.
Yeah.
Definitely get it. I'll just say on my end, I like Glenn's open door thing. What elements, we're getting repetitive with some of the authenticity and openness communication. I like Jen's no secrets. That's definitely an element that works it out. Coming to the table, as long as you're coming to the table and talking about things and discussing things, that in my opinion can keep you together. Sticking with it, like my grandparents said, I think sticking with it is a big thing. Now, taking on board Glenn's question, do you stick with it even if you're miserable? I mean, it really depends on what you want. It depends on what you want in the marriage, and it depends on if you're miserable. If can you work out the reasons why you're miserable? Is there something that can be done to get out of that miserable place? Those are all questions that the two people would have to ask. I would think that would weigh heavily on the decision to stay or go, for sure. Okay, next one. What things cause the death of a relationship? And I'll go first on this one. I mentioned at the top of the show finances, and I don't think that's a big enough reason. Uh, Cheating, infidelity, I think is another one of the reasons it's mentioned in the world, just in general. But I would use Jen's positive thing, no secrets. If there are secrets in the relationship, to me, that is huge. That's a big killer. If there are secrets, then it's not only affecting you today, because the person keeping the secret's always waiting for the possibility that something's going to come up. If they're not being open and upfront and authentic about who they are, and they're not telling the other person. So there's always, in my opinion, a time bomb that's waiting to go off, and they're not even enjoying, in my opinion, the relationship that they're in day by day. They're just trying to avoid any of the secrets coming up. And this happens in so many marriages. I've seen it. I've seen it happen where one of them, or both of them, even, it could be both people that have secrets, and they're just waiting, hoping that they don't come out somehow. When they do, it can be incredibly destructive. So just because of the time that we have, I'm not going to say more, but there's a lot of reasons why, a lot of things that can be the death of a relationship. I'll just add really quickly, the lack of communication can be the death of a relationship before it ever goes anywhere.
Yeah.
People not talking, I think that's huge. Not communicating, not talking, not discussing, not coming to the table. There is no table in some relationships. There's no discussion. And you would think, well, that's arranged marriages sometimes. No, there are arranged marriages that work out very, very well, because the communication is part of the expectation of marriage. So it doesn't always necessarily mean that. What do you think, Jen? What are some of the things that can cause the death of a relationship? 10 minutes.
Gosh, yeah, I know this is getting a little bit repetitive. No secrets, communicating, sharing in just everyday things, not just the boring stuff, but just the things that produce camaraderie. Being together on the adventure of life, even the hard stuff. Just sharing with one another. Sorry, my brain's not working the best right now.
That's right.
I might have to go after the 10 minutes are up.
Okay. I understand. We understand. No problem, Jen. Appreciate you sticking with it. We don't have a whole lot left, and we have like 20 minutes, so that's no problem. Glenn and I
Yeah.
can go over the rest and get through it. So, Glenn, the next slide I see the next slide that's coming up is repetitive. We already addressed this at the beginning, and I didn't spot it. And guys, I've been really busy this week, and I feel like this is a fairly good write up, but I didn't have the time to edit things, and usually I pass it off to Jen, and Jen did look at it, but you know, she's had a difficult day in other ways today too. So um, this won't happen like this again. Normally, I have proofreading and things like that, and this would have been spotted and taken out. So the next slide: why do two people that fall in love go all the trouble to get married, tie their lives together, but later fall out of love? It's a recap of a question we already asked. So we'll skip down to if any relationship does not include many of these elements we've discussed in detail in these broadcasts. Well, I think this is more a rhetorical question.
Okay.
How can the relationship
Tell me
last?
where you want to go, Cripps, but I would like to answer the question on the board at the moment too.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Glenn.
I think you covered all the obvious.
Okay.
I would say one of the main things that cause the death of a relationship is the inadequacy of the participants.
Ooh.
Can you explain a little further?
Yeah,
Well,
please.
I know from my point of view that the relationships of mine that have gone belly up have been in the main contributed to by me my inadequacies. I'm trying to be something I'm not to make a relationship function, and it doesn't work.
Oh dang.
Wow.
That's
I'm the one who's inadequate. It's not somebody else's fault. It's like I've got to own it. That's why
Yeah.
a lot of times I know the other person contributes, but I've got to own my part, and that's a lot of reason why things have fallen over in the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Wow. I like that. I'm gonna have to think more about that inadequacy of the person. I'm assuming that would also tie in. I mean, we've discussed many times self-esteem as being at issue in a lot of things. Um, would it be safe to say that that inadequacy could come from that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bet.
Okay.
You just feel that you're just not good enough. So therefore,
Yeah.
what do? You come into the relationship with this thought, I'm not good enough. And how do you come from not being not good enough to ever be good enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Big question.
I was going to add to that. I had this
Please.
huge epiphany on Saturday, and I was talking to Annie about it, and I realized that I had spent my entire life waiting for people to choose me,
Mhm.
and without realizing that I could do the choosing. Now, that's a little bit different when it comes to family. You can't really choose your family. You know what I mean? I mean, you can in the sense you could walk
Yeah.
away from your family, but you're born
Right.
into it without a choice per se.
Right.
But it's one of the reasons I got into some bad relationships because it was almost like I didn't realize that I had a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
And with my self-esteem being so low, I thought, well, I'm going to have to
Yeah.
have somebody choose me because I'm not worthy enough or something
Mhm.
to be the chooser, you know?
Right. Right.
So that was already starting me off in a place of inadequacy.
Right.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we may do a broadcast about some of the things that you've discovered this weekend. So we'll talk about that more later. Okay, so thank you for that, Jen. I appreciate it. So let's go down to the slide because while we have Jen, with the couple of minutes we have left, we might actually be able to get through these last couple of questions, and we can just Jen can go and we can just say goodnight. I think. I don't know. We might have to do one more chat and then we can just finish up. But okay, so the next one is do people in general fail to understand that change should happen together in a positive way rather than negative direction. Now, Jen had mentioned this earlier, but I think there's a lot to this. And I'll go first. I think that there's this idea, and Jen just mentioned it not too long ago, of people not understanding that there should be change. And it's not the kind of change where it's negative, like you're not the person I married. Like you're, like Jen said, put your best foot forward. And that's the one aspect of dating that I've never liked. In fact, I had told Jen that if I was going to date someone ever again before she and I met and I went on a first date, I would say, let's, instead of putting our best foot forward, let's tell each other the worst thing that we think about ourselves.
Or that
And
we've done.
yeah, or
Yeah.
that we've done, and let's see if there's anything in that, after that, bombshell is out there. Let's see what happens then. And I really wanted to do that because I don't think putting your best foot forward is helpful. I think it's way more helpful if the person stays after you tell them some really negative aspects of yourself or some things that you struggle with. And that worked when I did that with Jen and was honest about things. She didn't leave.
Nope.
So I think there's some truth to that. But Jen, what do you think? Do you think that people don't understand that there should be positive change and that you should grow and change together?
Um, yeah, I don't think it's taught. I don't think it's
Right,
talked about.
right.
And I there, I've been racking my brain thinking, where did this idea come from? These things that we kind of base our lives off of when it comes to marriage
Yeah,
and relationships. And part of me thinks it's movies,
yeah,
because there's all of these movies of this very like plot. You get married, you have a
yeah.
couple kids, the
Hmm.
people grow apart, they change,
Yeah,
they're not a part of each other's changing,
right.
which separates you. You're like continents apart. The kids grow up, they leave for college, you're an empty
Yeah.
nester, and you're not able to relate to one another because there's
Hmm.
just been this disconnect forever.
Yeah,
And it's very sad. And so if you can start, and it's tough because if you can start the connection and this idea, this different way of doing it from the
hmm,
beginning, it's
hmm,
so much easier to maintain because it becomes like breathing. It's just the staying connected, growing together,
right,
healing in the same direction, with past stuff, growing in the
right,
same direction. It's a little bit tougher to figure out that you're doing it wrong down the line and be like, hey, let's change the trajectory here.
right,
Let's do it right from this point forward. It's
right,
possible, but it's just a little bit harder.
right. Okay. We're running out of time. So, Jen, thank you for answering that question. Glenn and I, if it's okay with you, we'll come back and we've
Yeah.
got just a couple more questions to finish up and then we'll be done. And I don't want to just end it right here
Yeah.
because we'll go over the Discord stuff like we normally do and say goodbye to everyone and all that. So, go ahead and take a second and say goodbye to everyone, Jen. We appreciate you being here, even though you didn't feel good. So, thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Thank you guys so much for coming out and having this discussion with us as always. And we love you guys, and you guys have fun. I'm going to go put some ice on my head.
Okay.
I'll see you
Thank
guys
you,
next
Jen.
week.
Thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so guys, hang out a little bit. Glenn's going to do another chat for us, and he and I will just finish up with the couple remaining questions, and we'll call it a night, guys. So thank you for sticking around. We'll be right back. All right, I'm back.
We're going.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Hello to Kellyanne Dean. Glad that you stopped in. Yeah. Kellyanne, Jenn wasn't feeling well, so she took off. And if you haven't heard, they changed the Google Meets thing. Well, they didn't change. We're on borrowed time for a while. We were able to use it without having to switch, but it only allows you, what is it, an hour, Glenn?
Yeah.
It allows you an hour. And so with the 2 hour broadcast, we have to change it over because, in order to set up the show, we have to do it, join the chat so we can talk when we're setting it up. So that takes up about 15 minutes. Then we got 45 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, here we are. Thanks for sticking around. So, Glenn, I appreciate you sticking with me and certainly understand that Jen's head's been bothering her tonight. So, you and I will just finish up. There's only a couple more questions here, and then we'll end it. And I know you're busy and you've got a lot of stuff you have to do as well. So this will work out just fine. So the question that Jenn just answered: do people in general fail to understand that change should happen together in a positive way rather than a negative, in a negative direction? So I filled that out a little bit by saying that it seems like to me, I mean, there's this idea that Jenn presented that at the top of the broadcast, I talked a little bit about this idea, like, you're not the same person that I married. And you hear that all the time. That's not just one person. It's like, oh, he's changed or she's changed, and not in a good way. It seems like if a person changed in a positive way, and we'll get to that question coming up, but it seems like if they changed in a positive direction, that would be okay with the person. But if two people are going in a relationship thinking that that person that I married, they're going to be that way for our entire marriage, is that a mistake, Glenn? What do you think about all that?
For a start, I don't think people in general even think about it.
Right.
So that would be my guess. I would say the only way that I can see that this works is you come to the relationship, you say, look, every minute is I'm going to be different. So therefore,
Right.
I'm open to whatever comes. So just
Oh,
keep the door open rather than trying to be some fixed statue in the relationship, because it's just going to fall. What
right.
do you want? Two statues looking at each other and doing what? It
Yeah.
sounds a bit boring, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a Greek museum of art and history.
Absolutely. I've
Yeah.
been to those and they can be depressing with all the bits missing.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's a great point. Yeah. So going into the relationship, I think it would make a huge difference if there was an expectation that, hey, this person is not going to always be the same. So if you're marrying a person just based on who you met, you're starting off, in my opinion, you're starting off the marriage in a difficult position to begin with. There, so in other words, in any relationship, you should expect the other person to change. Now, Jen's not here to answer this anymore, but she and I have talked a lot about it, and we're both delighted by the fact that we're not the same person. I don't want to be the same person that she met. My gosh, and Glenn can attest to this. I have grown and matured tremendously since Glenn and I started our relationship, or restarted rather. Well, I guess it's accurate. Started our relationship. I knew him before. I'd met him before, but we didn't really have a relationship. So I think we kicked up in 2017, shortly after my mom died, and that's when we started our relationship. Now, you've already shared this, so this is not going to be a huge surprise, but you've openly shared with me that you have seen change in me and maturity and things like that. That's what I want. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. So I'm not the same person that Jenn met. I'm not the same person that you met. And that should be expected. I want to be a different person. I want to be more mature. I want to learn more from life and bring those changes on board into who I am. What do you think?
Well, I think the crazy thing about this is that if there's two people, one is open to change and the other one is in a fixed place, the one who's fixed has all the power. Because what do you do in
Right.
conversation or communication with someone who puts the wall up and says, well, I'm not changing, I'm not interested in change?
Right.
Where can you go with that if you're the person who's trying to evolve and develop and learn and
Right.
grow, whatever?
Yeah.
That's just like a dead end.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Just the
Well,
thought of it is horrendous.
well, that's the next question. So you set it up perfectly. So the next question is, what if one person is growing and changing, the other person remains stagnant? So that's kind of what you're talking about. So since you addressed it a little bit, I'll fill it in on my end a little bit. Yeah. So you use the word horrendous, and I would completely agree. So one person is working on themselves, however they do it, whether it's reading self help books, or which I don't think there's a whole lot of value in that personally, but it does exist, or they're exercising and they're trying to be healthy. Um, they're maturing. They're growing and changing. I can't think of a better way to say that. They're improving themselves. So you have one person doing that, and the other person's staying stagnant. I think that's a great word, stagnant. The idea of stagnant water, water that's sitting, it's not flowing. There's no new life, and there's no new water coming in that's sweeping away the bad stuff and replacing it with better stuff. It's a stagnant pool of water that, who knows, an animal could have died in there, and that's in there. It's polluted. It's gross. Uh, that's not a good thing. Um, and you said the person that's not changing has all the power, but I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of the person who's changing, who's with this person that's not doing anything. They're exactly the same. I would think that would be a problem for the person that's changing if the other person isn't doing anything. Like you said, statue. I think that's a good mental image. One person's a statue, the other person's a dynamic human being. I think there could be problems for each person depending on which way you look at it. What do you think about that?
Well, I just wrote a note on the chat, and I just can't see how a person who's just so set in idea or whatever in the way that they live or and just closed, how is that being invested in the relationship? I can't see it.
No, no, I don't think that it is. We're coming from the angle of this is the same person that I so let's say the person's already stagnant, but they meet someone, and for whatever reason, we'll call it chemicals or best foot forward or whatever. Maybe the stagnant person is pretending to be someone else. So for whatever reason, they catch someone or they find someone that thinks that best foot forward is something they're interested in, and then they actually live together. I've said before that you can meet someone and date and all that, live in separate places, but it's a completely different thing when you live in the same place with a person day by day. It's a completely
That's
different
that's
scenario.
true. That's true.
So the two people get together, and then the one that's moving and growing and changing realize the other person, that all they did was put up a false representation of who they are, and they're really a stagnant person that isn't interested in doing anything.
So they weren't being authentic in the first place. So
Right.
where's that going to end? In the garbage tip.
Yeah, in the bin, as they say.
That's it. Do you call it
Yeah.
the tip or the dump? We call it the dump.
Dump. Yeah, dump works. Yeah, I don't know what that
Yeah.
other thing is that you said. Rubbish bin, garbage, trash can, garbage container, whatever. It's all the same thing, in my opinion. So we agree that that's not helpful. It's not good.
I'd be insane.
Yeah. So really, we'll just have one more question, and we'll end on a positive note. Shouldn't people be growing and changing together, Glenn? Let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sorry, just getting the can a relationship when a person is growing and the other is not. Oh. Well, I think two people can be together on that basis under the same roof,
Mhm.
but I would be very doubtful whether there's a relationship in inverted commas, because if you're not talking or if you're not communicating with someone, that to me says there isn't a relationship.
Right.
So no,
Right.
you can't. How are you going to deal with that? I mean, I would be putting my head through a wall,
Yeah.
but maybe I need to have thinner walls in this house because they would probably break my skull if I hit my head on the wall, and I don't have to.
Your house is very well built, Glenn.
You're not wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't do
Right.
it. Honestly, I would have to walk out that door.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fortunately, you have the open door policy. So if you ever really wanted to walk out, then I guess you could. But I don't see
Man,
that happening at this
I'm
point.
staying.
Yeah. You're in it. Yeah. I mean,
I'm in it to win it.
honestly, I think people that have listened to the broadcast for a long time understand, at least in passing, understand the situation that you're in. And if you wanted to leave, you would have left a long time ago. I mean, that I'm not saying that the opportunity has passed, but you made a decision to stay and you're sticking with it, and I think that's admirable. And I think that everyone has that decision to make. Everyone can decide to stay or go. And when you decide to stay and you make that decision, you stick with it. And that's where I'm at. I'm staying regardless of anything. I mean, literally, even death. There's the thing in wedding vows that people say, "Till death do us part." Well, in my system of beliefs, which I realize you don't share, and that's okay. I believe that there is life after this one, and Jen and I have discussed, if that ends up being true, then we would like to be together forever. And I think that's a beautiful thought. I won't know until I shuffle off this mortal coil, as they say, or um, this body is pushing up daisies, or whatever way you want to look at it. I won't really know until then, but I have my beliefs, and I look forward to there being an ongoing relationship with Jen and with other people, and it's exciting to me. And maybe it's to some people, I'm sure it's a pipe dream, or it's a delusion of some sort, but I take comfort in that. And the truth is, if I'm wrong, I won't know. I mean, I won't know that I was wrong. If and this is another topic, I suppose, but if this is the end, this is the only life we have, I'll never have awareness of that. I don't think, but anyway.
I just prefer to think in this moment I feel privileged, and if it continues, well, that's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like that. I mean, that if your goal is to live this life to the best of your ability, and you think that's all there is, I mean, I think that's a benefit, because hopefully you're gonna live the best life you can. But someone with the same attitude might not think that way. They might think, "Well, this is the only shot I got. I'm gonna do as much self-destructive stuff, or I'm gonna just live a hedonistic lifestyle." And many people do that, but anyway.
No, that's not me.
No, I know it's not. Okay, so the last question shouldn't. I mean, there was one more question, but it involves God, so I'm not even going to go there. Shouldn't people be growing and changing together? That's the last, and you got the slide up. So let's just address that, and then we'll be done. We'll close it up.
Sorry, Chris. Which I've got the shouldn't people be growing and changing together? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I kind of addressed it, but
Do you want to go to the God slide then? No problem. See you. It's a click of a
I mean,
it's a click of a mouse.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. Yeah. So can a relationship survive when a person is growing and the other's not? Shouldn't people? Okay. So it's this last part. Shouldn't people be growing and changing together? I mean, is that a reasonable expectation? Because to me, it is. Shouldn't people be growing and changing together?
I just would have thought it's automatic.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You wouldn't even be thinking about it. It's just dynamic. It just takes its own path, and I don't know that I could say shouldn't people be growing. I don't know that I'd want to impose that, but for me, I would just say, well, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, now
Yeah.
Coco stuck his paw into my coat. You
Oh
should
no.
see it. It's shredded.
No, that's not
That
good.
says it's lunchtime.
Yeah, we're almost done. So on this one, we'll just finish this, and then John has a question. We'll address that,
Sure.
and we'll say goodnight. So on this one, shouldn't people be growing and changing? You feel like it's elementary. Of course that, but I think there are a lot of people that don't understand that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about divorce rate as high as it is. If people understand that, and if they go into the marriage with the expectation that, hey, I'm going to be growing and changing, you're going to be growing and changing. Like, I like what you said, you're not going to be the same person every minute of the day. To me, that, yeah, absolutely. I'm not the same person every minute of the day. I'm not super moody, but that doesn't mean I'm the same person. I react to different things in life, and things that as they come up, and I react to Jen when she reacts to something. Now I'm not all over the place in my reactions. I mean, she can reasonably count on that she has an idea of how I'm going to react to certain things, because she sees how I do that. So it's not that she's meeting a stranger every day. It's just simply that I am changing and growing. So anyway, to close this part up, if you're in a relationship, if you're not in a relationship, if you're thinking about having one, my strong suggestion would be to have an expectation that elements should be there that we've discussed on many broadcasts, which is being open, being authentic, and communicating, coming to the table, things like that. I feel are very important. Okay. So John's question, then we're done. John says, "Can you guys give some reasonable examples to the changes that would cause you to make a grave move as to quit relationship, minus obvious reasons?" So I'll turn it over to you, Glenn, if you have a response to John's question. Um, Reasonable examples to changes that would cause you to make a grave move as to quit. Is there anything, Glenn, that would happen that would cause you to quit the relationship that you're in, minus any obvious reasons?
Oh, my goodness. Isn't that the toughest question of the year?
That's the last one
He
too.
laid it on there, didn't he?
Mhm.
Reasonable examples to the changes would cause you to make a grave move. Okay, try to articulate this. I wouldn't walk out of any relationship until I had established exactly what the facts are. In other words, I wouldn't knee jerk react. If Sandra went and had an affair, I'm not going to say, well, get out of the house. No, 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 no,
Right.
no.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to happen, but I'm just using
Yeah.
it as a hypothetical.
Sure.
I would be, honestly, I can't think a grave move to quit the relationship. Geez. Well, in the relationships that I'm comfortable, I know and are authentic. It's now that being different from one that's probably superficial. Oh my goodness. Oh man, that is a grave move. A grave implies like someone's, stuck a knife in your back or something.
Right.
I honestly can't think of any within the context of
Right.
my own relationships that would cause me to do that.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fair enough. So I'll let you off the hook a little bit here.
Oh crikey,
'Cause-
John. Whew. You should give 2 days notice for those ones.
I love it. I love it. So on this one, Jen and I have talked about this, actually, not in the way that John phrased the question, but before I met Jen, and in fact, when I met my ex-wife when we first met, and I had explained to her that I was devoted to being married and I would stay married, but if she ever cheated on me, that would be the end. That I couldn't handle, if she were to have an affair, the marriage would not survive that. Now, I said that as an expectation before we even got married. I laid that I mean, you can call it a boundary or whatever, but I think it's a fairly good one. But I was looking at who I was at the time and saying, if I can think of anything that I could not deal with, that's what it would be. And then I met Jen, and I told her just the other day, even before this came up as a topic, I said, I used to think that if the person I was with had an affair, that I wouldn't be able to get past it. That would be the end for me. But knowing Jen and being as close as we are, and this is something that will never happen, and I know that beyond any shadow of a doubt that she would not ever have any need or desire to have an affair, emotional or otherwise, with another person. But having said that, I told her that I don't feel like even if she did have an affair, that would be the end for me. The relationship is so dynamic and so authentic and so open and so loving and empathetic, and it's just so wonderful. It really, really is, and I can't say enough how wonderful it is and what a gift and a treasure that if she actually did that, I would still be able to work it out. That's how much I love the relationship and how much I love her as a person. I'm not saying it wouldn't be difficult. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a struggle for me, but I don't think that would end it. Then you mentioned knife in the back or something. Yeah. So if she was trying to physically kill me, which is an impossibility, but let's say maybe something happened to her brain, God forbid, and she was going crazy, and she tried to physically kill me. Yeah, I might have to protect myself in some way. I mean, not to do anything to her, but I might have to leave the premises for a time so that I'm not murdered, if that were the case. But it doesn't mean that I wouldn't try to figure out what's going wrong and try to fix it. And it wouldn't necessarily be the end. So, great question, John. I can't think of anything. I literally cannot wrap my mind around. I've already laid out the scenarios Jen and I've talked about. Well, if I was paralyzed, I might want you to not have to take care of me and things like that. And then for me, if I had Alzheimer's, it's like my worst fear. I feel like my brain is how I relate to things and people, and it's part of who I am. And I know that particular disease is insidious, and it's a horrible thing for someone to have to go through. They the person that loves them has to watch them become less and less of the person that they are, and to the point of forgetting their family and loved ones and forgetting a person they've been married to for long. It's horrible. And I wouldn't want to put Jen through that. I wouldn't want to have her watch me go through that. But if it happened to her, I would take care of her, even if she forgot who I was. Uh, I would um, I would not want to leave for that reason. I can't think of anything. So there you have it. That's it. I'll just share. Annette said, spending 30 years refusing to honestly address anything difficult and not getting help. I appreciate you sharing that, Annette. Yeah, that's hard yards, as my mom used to say. To be in a relationship like that, where spending a lot of time with someone and they're not willing to honestly address any difficult things, and not getting help for it. When a person refuses to get help when there's something wrong, that's a marriage ender in many cases. Okay. Glenn, do you have a redress about my comment, or can we say our goodnights and move forward?
I just said in the chat, forgiveness is a loving quality.
Yeah.
I think that sort of says it all. None
Yeah.
of us are perfect, so therefore that having that forgiveness inside of us and the willingness to show it, I think,
Yeah.
is a great way to end for me.
Okay. Thank
So,
you, Glenn.
thank you.
All right. Glenn, say goodnight to the peoples for us.
Yeah, good night all.
Okay.
I can go out and see Mr. Warman now,
There you go.
and then they're going to stuff on me because I wasn't out there digging in the trench. I can see,
Okay.
I can see it coming. The other day they said I was down the other end and doing something else, and I could hear the word beer. And I thought, okay, so did I get paid out on? And about 20 bottles of beer later, we're all
Right.
got paid out on.
Right.
So yeah, that's the way it is. It's all good.
Yeah.
Good
Thank
night,
you, Glenn.
everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody. We hope that you've gotten something out of tonight's broadcast. At least, maybe you've come up with the questions for yourself. If you're in a relationship, maybe there are some things that we talked about tonight that you can take on board and talk to your significant other or the person you're in a relationship with, or if you're hoping to have a good relationship. Hopefully, we gave you some ideas of what that looks like, what things to avoid, what kind of expectations to have moving forward. And some people in the chat had some really good comments. So as always, we appreciate those. We'll be back again next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as usual, we'll be here on Tuesday in our Discord. And as always, I will pop the link in there. I think most people probably have it by now, but I'll put that in the chat. And we'll be coming in at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. We'll stick around till about 9 p.m. And if no one shows up, that's fine. It's not a requirement that anyone come. But if you would like to come and just talk to us, it's not a broadcast. We just, get to know each other and things like that. And it can be a lot of fun. We'll wait till 9. If no one shows up, if you come after 9 and don't see us in there, you'll know that we will show up. If something happens and we're not going to be there, we will post it in the Discord so not to expect us. If you do plan on coming and you can't make it until after 9, just pop a note in the Discord. We're happy to wait around if we know someone's coming, but we're not going to. I'm sure that makes sense to everyone. We're not going to just sit there if no one is coming. Okay. All right. So there you go. All right. That's it for us. As usual, thanks again for listening. If you're listening to the playback, thank you for stopping by. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And also, the biggest thing is word of mouth. We don't advertise or anything like that. So if you do get some enjoyment out of this, please tell friends and family if you care to do that. We would just, like to have more people be part of the conversation, as always. And thank you once again to John for the suggestion. If you have any suggestions for future broadcasts, like I said, there's several ways you can do that. You can pop it in our Discord. I just post the link in there. You can put it in there. You can put it in the chat. You can put it in the description. You can send an email. So there's several different ways you can get to us. All right. I hope everyone has a good week. See some of you on Tuesday. The rest of you, we'll see you next Sunday night. Until then, good night and God bless.